Hello, everybody. Welcome to the UK Deaf Leadership Summit. And this is a webinar today. We've been running these seminars for the last 3 years, and it's interesting to have lots of different guest speakers come and present. The intention of the webinar is to inspire leadership and also to promote leadership practice. Our special guest today is Sabina Iqbal. Sabina has a number of excellent achievements, which we'll talk about later. She's been named as one of the top 13 most powerful Muslims in the UK, Muslim women in the UK in 2019, and the top 10 European Muslim women of influence in 2010. She works for a local authority in Sensory Services team, and she's currently the Sensory Services team management or in a team management role. And she works in Hertfordshire. She's continuing to develop her leadership skills, and she is undertaking an MBA in senior leadership and apprenticeships with the local authority in which she works. She's the founder of the charity Deaf Parenting UK and has a number of other achievements as well, which we can talk about a little bit later. But first of all, I'd like to welcome Sabina and we can start having conversations. So please join us in the chat.
Hello.
Are you well?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. And are you ready for me to fire some questions at you about your leadership skills and experience?
I'm ready and waiting.
You're up for it. Excellent. So I have a number of simple questions to start with. I can see you are now in senior management in the public sector. A deaf senior manager, in fact. But let's start from the beginning. Can you explain to the audience your first aspirations when you were leaving school? What did you want to achieve then?
Oh, when I look back, when I left school, I went to college, and my dream, I always wanted to be a businesswoman. I love traveling, and my dream was to have my own deaf travel agency. So once I completed my A-levels, I worked at a disability day centre in administration, and people said you should go to university. And I said, oh no, I don't want to go to a mainstream college. I had enough doing that at A-levels, and I worked at a youth training scheme. So they offered any courses. And I said, well, I want to do business, and I want to be able to travel. And I wanted to work for British Airways, and I did level 1 and level 2 in traveling. I learned so much on that course. That was pre-1995. So I passed my level 2 in 1994. And when I applied for a job, they said, sorry, you can't work here, you're deaf. I mean, that had a huge impact. So all of a sudden, I then looked at, sorry. I'm sorry, you were going to ask me a question?
We can talk about that a little bit later, but you were describing there your career, and it showed you had a great deal of experience. You had some ups and downs there throughout your career journey. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. When I was growing up, I've got 2 brothers. I see a lot of young people in my time who have, at 13 and 14, they did a newspaper round. They used to get, little jobs for to earn some pocket money. And I say to my parents, please, what can I do? I want to do something. But it was always, no, it's because you're deaf. So just had so many barriers. So local careers advice said, well, maybe you can consider something differently. Maybe you should go to college. What courses do you want to do? And it wasn't until I bumped into, had to thank my mum. She said, oh, we've got a deaf person working at the local authority. And when I used to come back from boarding school, I would talk to Geraldine O'Hara, one of my first role models. She was always encouraging. She used to speak to me. She used to ask what my aspiration was. And she asked me if I'd like to sit on a panel for a BSL interpreter. I thought, me? She said, you can represent the deaf community. Well, I did. I sat on the panel. And that's when I learned the importance of interviewing skills prior to applying for jobs. So I was at the other side. I was at the panel asking questions. And although I was nervous, the panel were very supportive. They said, you're here, this is for you, for your learning. And I did a lot of voluntary work at that time. I was 15. I did voluntary work at play schemes with deaf children and disabled children, going out on outings. And, you know, I was a role model. So from that, I progressed. I always wanted to help others. I wanted to support, encourage. If I saw something that wasn't, I wanted to transform things. That's my attitude. I'm passionate on equality. If there's a gap, what can I do to fill that gap? And I'll come up with initiatives or have a small or create a project. So that's my career journey. Also, like I said before, I actually went into social work by accident. Some friends said there's an odd job opportunity for a local authority, and it's a research project on Asian deaf people accessing the council services, and they desperately needed people with lived-in experience. So I just happened to be one of them, and I thought, me? I mean, this seems such a high position to apply for. So with support from my family and people going through interviewing skills, I applied for the job. And to my absolute amazement, I got the job and I learned so much. I mean, it was such a learning curve. That social care, what it actually means. I went out, I visited families, Asian families, and most of them have never met a deaf role model. So the first 5 minutes of entering their homes, I mean, they would say, you're deaf, you're working, you drive. So it means that my child that's deaf they can achieve. So the first 5 minutes of going into their homes, I said, if you think about the dynamics at that time, I had to bring in 2 interpreters, one a BSL interpreter and one a translator, like different languages, different Asian languages. So it means that the communication, it wasn't like a normal visit to a home where it's just straightforward communication. We had that dynamics, but I absolutely loved it. People would say I had listening skills, I could negotiate, thinking about confidentiality. So if you think about that, I empowered people, but at the same time, I had those transferable skills and I could show them that I can achieve. So I saw lots of cases where they were such wonderful stories of their achievements. I mean, thinking 30 years later, as I bump into those people and they explain what they've achieved. Because just by being involved in that project has enabled them to have a positive outcome in their life journeys. And that is a positive change.
That's really interesting. It sounds like it was a really rewarding experience. You were having an opportunity to see what was happening at that time, and then you could years later see the benefit. You could see the appreciation for what you've done. Let's go back a little bit, if you don't mind. I noticed you were talking about role models, and that's one of the key things for leaders as we're moving through our career. You mentioned getting into social work by accident. You had support from your family as well. But who are the other role models you have? You mentioned Geraldine O'Halloran, of course. Who are the other people who inspired you and encouraged you, especially within the field of social work? Maybe you could explain a little more about that.
One of my first managers was Kavita. She was the first Asian deaf woman, deaf social worker. I learned so much of her. Sadly, she's passed away earlier this year. She had cancer. It's very
sorry to hear
that. But her passion, her motivation, always looking at equality, teaching me how to challenge, looking at the systems, looking at attitude and taboos in Asian communities. So I learned so much from her that later on I would bump into her. We worked together. It was wonderful. Then she changed her career and went into deaf yoga. But she had such an amazing impact. She really did. She was amazing. And at that time, we're talking about going back to 1996. I mean, 1996. At that time, what was really quite a hot topic was deaf ethnicity issues. And there was lots of research. There was Bradford University, York University were doing some research. There were some networks of Black and minority ethnic groups coming up. So it was a fantastic opportunity for me to network and to be able to engage with all these organisations. And also you meet different role models, and it's so important to have that network. So that means that you meet new people that you can learn from and that you can exchange ideas, skills, and obviously being able to negotiate.
And maybe I can just pick something up there. That was a really excellent summary. I'm sure Kavita and some others with whom you were working, they inspired you and influenced you. Around that time, you started thinking about becoming a leader. Was that what happened?
Yes, funnily enough, yes. Kavita was the one that challenged me. I went to a deaf school and I went to a hearing mainstream college, and it was tough. I was the only deaf person and there was 900 hearing students. So I'd had enough of that. So obviously I went to work, and Kavita said, thinking about why don't you go back to university and get qualified as a social worker maybe? Oh, because of my experience of university, I was quite reluctant. And she said, well, just because you had a bad experience at one college, it doesn't mean you're going to have a bad experience at others. And you can have interpreters. And it's very important that when you go to university, you have registered qualified interpreters. But what she did, she encouraged me to go at Bristol University, had Bristol Horizon course. So they had different streams, and one of them was management. So that appealed to me. So when I got to that university, I think it was just a 1 year. I think it was a 1 year course for 4 blocks a year, and I did deaf studies, linguistics, the deaf community, deaf culture, deaf history. And I met different role modules, lecturers. Oh, it inspired me. And also the management made me think, who are my role models? And if you look at the YWFD, and I went to international conferences, and I met some very influential deaf role models. From that, I thought, I want to be a deaf leader. I want to make a difference. So really, it was, well, thank Kavita for giving me that nudge. And at the university, the environment was fully accessible. Everybody was deaf. Some were lecturers were deaf, some were hearing, but they were BSL users. I was just immersed into that, and I didn't feel excluded at all. It was a completely different experience. It was a wonderful experience, and that drove my passion and motivation. So I thought, well, what next? I was passionate to learn. So the next level was to become a professional social worker.
Excellent. We can maybe focus a little bit more on that later. I want to fast forward a little bit right now. And I just want to say congratulations that you have become the chair of trustees for Sign Health. But I'd like to ask you about being in the board of trustees and what that role means for you, and why did you take on that responsibility?
Well, it's really exciting. I've only just become the chair. It's last week. I'm very passionate. I'm passionate for social care and health. And I've been in my present role in this field of health and social care for 25 years. And I've seen reoccurring themes. It's barriers after barriers after barriers. Barriers to health and how that can affect some person's well-being. Like, for example, you come across a child, and if they don't get the support as early as possible, it will go on to develop mental health problems. So I always believe that prevention is the key. If you can get the right support as early as possible, then that person will have a better quality of life. And equally, I noticed that other groups of people, say older people, what do they have? What support do they have? And then when you look at people with a sensory need, do they have the same? It should be in parallel. Unfortunately, deaf people face barriers all the time. But if you think of mainstream, they can access various services. So there is no equity there at all. So I wanted to do something about that. So part of that is the importance of education. Challenge people. When you make a decision, why did you make that decision? And promoting awareness. So really that links, and working in partnership is important. And thinking about legislation. We have the Equality Act that set up in 2010. We've got the Human Rights Act, 1998. So this is what drives and supports my work. So being the Sign Health Chair feels like this is my passion. It's the right move. I can influence. I want to do things bigger. I want to expand. The knowledge that I've got, I can bring into this. I can bring into this role, and I can support the exec board. And hopefully I can support them to make positive changes.
That's excellent. It's excellent that you have an ambition and a drive. The things you want to do with the board, I think, is really positive. It's going to be an exciting time for you. I'd like to ask another question connected to that. You've been working in social services for quite some time. Just wanted to highlight one particular characteristic of leadership. That would be resilience. Resilience, of course, is part of your journey, as you've mentioned on a couple of occasions already. But can you explain a little bit more about resilience and what that means for you?
Resilience. Some people have different signs, don't they? But it's the same thing.
Yeah, two different signs.
For me, it's personal experience. You know, having discrimination, having situations throughout my life where people will say, you can't, you can't, you can't because you're deaf. You can't because you're Asian. Because you can't because you're a woman. You can't because you're a Muslim. Well, I mean, that's inspired me to, I think sometimes it's okay to experience the hard parts of life, the hard knocks. If life is easy and you sail through it and you don't face challenges, where's the passion? So that the oppression and things like Asian community, I've had a situation where in the community they, oh, you're deaf. Oh, I'm so sorry. I pray I pray that you can become hearing. Really. And I hope that you can speak well. So I turn it around and say, oh, I'm very happy. I'm married. I've got 3 children. I drive. I've got a good career. I can do a lot more. So don't worry about me. Worry about your community. I want to make sure that the people can achieve. If I can, they can. And so it's making them aware. We need to sometimes, in a nice way, challenge and get them to actually be able to then challenge themselves. Mm-hmm. Some people always worry about something they can't control. And I always say, there's 2 circles. One circle is something that you can influence, you can change. Anything you control, you can change. But the other, some things you can't control. It could be like COVID. It could be the weather. It could be something that will happen that you can't do it. It's just happened. So looking at those 2 circles, the one that you can change, that's where you should focus your energy. You can make changes. If you can't control it, why worry? And that's the reality. You can't change that. You can find ways around it, but if you can't change it, you can't change it. So I always advise people, remember, anything you can change, you can focus on that, you can influence people, you can influence the community. It's the same as I said previously. At the college, when I wanted to go to go into the travel business, they said you can't do it. So I thought, well, what can I do? I can't change. I can't change that. So I went. Now I'm doing something that I enjoy and what I can change. If I didn't make those changes, would I be the person I am today? So things happen for a reason. It's better to go with the flow. If something happens and it's unfortunate, you learn, deal with it, and then you move on and keep on going and then keep on progressing.
Clearly, you have bags of resilience based on your experience. And I think that determination, the willingness to keep going, and I love the examples of those 2 circles that you explained there. That makes a lot of sense. So let's look at something else more specifically. Your current role is incredible. I can't remember how many people have done this. Very few deaf people have been leading within the public sector and in public services. So I'd like to talk about your experiences in the public sector, being a leader in health and social care. So I wanted to ask you, and I know I've read about some of your history, and you've made things happen behind the scenes. I'd like for you to explain, what have you done? How have you affected influence? How have you changed legislation behind the scenes? especially in health and social care, and particularly relating to sensory services. Maybe you can explain something more about that, what you did. Maybe you can talk about the influence and the skills that you used to make that happen. You did some things, so maybe you can explain to the audience what you did.
Oh, that's a big question. If I go back to social work, my work was mainly raising awareness, influencing better access to services and support, and thinking about our citizens and people that use our services. But the common theme, as I said before, was barriers. So now in Hertfordshire, I've been in this role for the 12 years, and we have a statutory duty, the Care Act. So for many of you, if you're not aware of the Care Act, it's a combination of 60 years of social services legislation, from examples like National Assistance Act, and deaf people were included in that act, and it's the National Assistance Act 1948, and other legislations, the Community Care Act, Disabled Persons Registration, etc. Some of you might be aware of them and some of you might not. But it's a combination of the 60 years, and they had a new act, the Care Act. And I always see that as our strength, because for the first time in history, they mention sensory. For example, deaf-blind, Section 7 guidance. They say it's the duty of the social workers to have a deaf-blind guidance and the requirements, and that is stated in the Care Act, and that's our power. Thinking about rehabilitation support for people that are blind and partially sighted, and specialist practitioners. So if you have somebody with a sensory need, you have to have a specialist practitioner who's appropriately qualified and trained. So that is also in that legislation. The use of interpreters is mentioned in the Care Act. So it's me as a sensory services manager was able to say, I was able to protect my team. Because of the Care Act, I was able to say that we wanted to see things to change for the better. We talk about prevention. And like I said previously, I believe in prevention. But historically, the threshold and the criteria was too high. So prevention wasn't one of those, wasn't a criteria. But once we had the Care Act, that changed. So prevention became one of the main themes. So we could change that culture. So there was lots of work going on in the background, and we were able to shift to think about proportionality. I'll give you an example. Years ago, everything or anything would be just summarized, but now we have to ask the person, they lead the conversation, they will tell you what's important to them. For example, they might want to be independent, they want to go out, they need support doing X, Y, Z. So that means it's on their terms, not on us saying, oh, well, we think you need to do this, this, and this. We lead by their conversation, whatever is their priority. It could be, we might signpost them, it could be equipment, it could be a direct payment. So that means we're empowering that person, and that's how it should be. So for me, it's more about prevention, partnership working, empowerment, accountability. So I was able to lead my team to progress to the next level, which means that our residents can get the right support. when I look at other local authorities, it concerns me. I hear lots of colleagues from other local authorities, the frustrations, because they have one worker or their service has been dissolved into social services.
Right.
Like they work within the older people's team or disabilities, so the specialism is lost. For me, I see it as my personal responsibility to lead and to show them, other local authorities, our model. In my personal opinion, I'm a person with lived-in experience, and I understand the issues much better. I can push for change. I can push for a better outcome. And that's quite common with disabled leaders. We're able to, by personal experiences, we know the gaps, and we can use our experience for change and to make improvements.
Excellent. You're absolutely right. Services and disability services have been integrated into mainstream services, and it creates more of a challenge for generic services to meet the needs of clients. It creates a number of difficulties. I can definitely appreciate that. I hope we can see some changes to that in the future, and I hope you feel the same. I think that your model there of a sensory service team is, from my personal experience and from my view, I think it's amazing. I think it's an amazing model, and hopefully, and who knows, hopefully it will be replicated in other places in the future. But less about what I think that's going to happen. Let's come back to the questions. I'm sure that the audience are inspired by your career history, by your work in social care. Maybe it would be helpful if you could explain to the audience what you think makes a good leader. Is it problem solving? Is it resolving challenges? And what qualities do you think a good leader should have? Whether that person is a deaf or hearing person. And this is, of course, based on your lived experience.
What makes a good leader? For me, based on my experience, is being adaptable. Whatever the situation is, whatever crisis is thrown at you, you have to be adaptable. You have to be a good communicator. And that could include networking. So if I don't know the answer, I will most likely find somebody who does know. And then you learn from that. You have to be agile to the situation. You have to be flexible. You can be adaptable, but you have to also be flexible. I might have to change the way I work. And being responsive to the situation. Thinking about your behaviours. Lots of people say that I have emotional intelligence. Is that I can tune in. If there's something not quite right, I'm able to have that discussion, or I can spot a gap. So I will flag that up. Knowledge. Knowledge is power. It's what you know and who you know and the right people to connect with. And thinking about the power of influencing. What can I do? Some people say you can't change the world. Of course you can't change the world. It's huge. But thinking about what can I do? Going back to those two circles, I can't control that. But what can I control? Thinking about what can I do to influence. It could be influencing the decision maker, or influencing the policy, or challenge. Thinking about equity. I mean, you've got this service, but for this group of people you haven't. What are you going to do about it? So I can support that person. I can connect them with the right people and try and resolve whatever issues we have. Leadership. There's so many different types of leaders. You've got the transformation leadership. That means that you can change for the better, working with the organizations, working with people while you're going through transformation. I mean, if you think about COVID, we had to transform quickly in a very short space of time. The sensory strategy, I push for that. It's improving and removing barriers. So that's transformation for sensory services, which means that we have better access. There's that thinking about democratic leadership. It means people having a voice collectively, and an unusual word is servant leadership. So it means I think of the people first and foremost. I'm not there for my own ego. So quite often you can have autocratic leadership, or you can have, laissez-faire, meaning that you just let people control it and I just sit back. There's so many different types of leadership. I can't tell you how many. But the important thing is the quality. You have to have problem-solving skills. You have to be flexible, adaptable, responsive to a situation. Sometimes with a different leadership, it's like a bag of tools. And I always see, in this situation, I might use one type of leadership. And so I will pick on which type, and that enables me to be adaptable. So it's very important that when you're working with a team or people, it's useful to know their learning styles. For example, my learning style is Honey and Mumford. This is about learning styles, and I learn much better visually. I can watch people and I think, I can take that on board, but some people like theory, that's how they absorb the information. Some people are reflective, others are practical. So we've got 4 different types, but I'm visual, and it's personality as well. We have different traits of personalities. You can take a test. It's the Myers-Briggs personality test. I mean, you can Google it. And it's very interesting. It's fascinating to find out about yourself. You could be an extrovert, introvert, your perception. You could be perspective, whatever. So I tested myself, and I'm an ENTJ. You have to do the test yourself to find out what it means. But I'm a very strategic person. It means that I can look at the bigger picture. And details are okay, but I always look at the bigger picture, and then I go back and think, how can I achieve that? So I see the bigger picture, I work backwards, and then I think about the strategies to be able to achieve that. So that's my personality. But people have different personality, which is good. But sometimes if you understand yourself, then it makes sense. And then you can think about power, influence, or thinking about what you can do to change and influence others. So that's my view.
That's so interesting. You have a large bag of tools there that you're using in your leadership journey.
Yes, 25 years.
Indeed, 25 years. It was really interesting you were talking about the Myers-Briggs test, the personality test there. Now, I have the Myers-Briggs personality test. I use it quite a lot actually within my leadership teams, within the organization that I lead. It's not something to judge somebody, it's a tool to be able to help us work effectively together, working as a team.
Yeah.
So I think it's fantastic that you're using that. I do that too. And it's really interesting that you have those approaches. I would imagine that maybe not many leaders use that, but it's an excellent tool, and it's really great that you've used that. I like the idea of servant leadership. I think that's really helpful. Lots of the things you described there, it's just really inspiring.
Yeah, there's lots of add-ons now with leaderships. We've got the diversity and inclusion and what they called social leadership. I'm not sure if I got that. SL and social. Anyway, social leadership.
Socially inclusive leadership.
Maybe. It's social leadership. It means including disabilities. If you feel discrimination or oppression, then we want to see things better. We use our experience to influence, and we lead by example. And it's very interesting. We have ethical leadership, collaborative leadership. I mean, we have so many. I mean, I'm studying an MBA at the moment, and there's just so many. It's overwhelming. But it's important that you can pick those types of leadership as and when you need them.
Excellent. Let's move on. I noticed earlier you were talking, we've only got 15 minutes left, which is really exciting. I'd like to draw a little bit more out of you by asking a question. What do you think has been your greatest achievement to date? Maybe you can describe that.
Oh, so many. I have to say, I'm fortunate, my journey. I just happened to meet different types of people at the right time and at the right opportunities. My achievements, my glass ceiling moment is I founded Deaf Parents UK in 2001. Oh, I was 25. I was very young. And I set up a new charity because I saw there was a gap in the market. I asked other deaf organisations, you know, are you interested in setting this up? I thought, well, I either do nothing and leave it, or I think I'm going to do something about this. So as I said before, that's something I can control. So that was a defining moment in my career. So it means that people could use the service, the support. So I wrote a book for pregnancy, pregnancy and birth guide for deaf women. And that was the first ever book in the world that focused on deaf women throughout their pregnancy and pregnancy and birth. And that was the first in the world, as I said. I made my own videos for the Deaf Parents UK. I campaigned, I raised awareness, and you know, obviously trying to put responsibility on the health service for equality, thinking about legislation. Also, after that, I moved to team manager position. So I was a social worker. I became a manager in 2006, and because at that time the manager found it very difficult to recruit someone with sensory awareness, and I came with a wealth of experience and knowledge, but I was new to management. But she believed in me, and that made such a difference, having someone to believe in me, and I was able to thrive and thinking I can do this. Because of my work with Deaf Parent UK, working as a social worker, a manager, etc., I've actually got 19 awards.
19 in 2 years.
19 in 2 years, 2008 to 2010. I can't list them all because I can't remember them actually. But just to give you an idea, I had the Tesco Mum of the Year, a charity of mum. It was lovely. I met Gordon Brown. I went to number 10 Downing Street. I met a lot of celebrities. I mean, it was just amazing. Named top 13th, the most powerful woman in the UK. I was the only one. All the others were hearing. I was the only deaf one. I met Baroness Wolsey. But for the top 13, it was lovely meeting different people from television, media, sports, you know, fashion, etc. And then the European Muslim Woman of Influence, and I was one of 10. And 2 were from the UK, but I was the one that won, which was amazing. And at that time, my baby was only 2 weeks old. So I went to get my baby, and Sherry Blair was there. And she said, "Oh, give me the baby." And she went round and she passed my baby. It was such a surreal moment. So it's made me think it's nice to be recognised. And at the same time, I worked so hard for it. And I wanted to get where I am now then. And in 2000, I was at university doing my social work degree. And at the same time, I was working at various placements to keep things going. And I won, you know, the chocolate Mars. I won the Asian Student of the Award, and I was the first one. And the award was to give me an opportunity to review their disabled graduation scheme. So
Wow,
they asked me as a deaf person to go and review as part of a 4-month placement. So opportunities like that are just amazing. And for me, whatever opportunity comes my way, I grab it. When I was growing up, people always said, "You're deaf. You can't, you can't, you can't." I can. If the door is shut, and as Kavita always said to me, when the door is open, when you see an opportunity, and you see that door of opportunity, then it will open, and you will get opportunity after opportunity.
That's incredible. I think you're absolutely right. The awards are lovely, but at the same time, I think it's about feeling appreciated and feeling recognized. I think that can help break barriers in and of themselves. I think it helps people become more aware. And if you imagine this happening before 2003, before BSL was recognized, before the BSL Act came into fruition in 2022, what you've done, I think, is absolutely incredible. Unbelievable. Time is short. I've got 2 last questions for you before we finish. The first one, I'd like to ask you, and I'm sure the audience are interested in this. You're now the new chair of Sign Health, and you have a key role in Hertfordshire Local Authority as the team manager for Sensory Services. So, out of interest for us, how do you compare the 2 different roles?
Compare with the 2 roles. That's a big question. With Sign Health, I'm very new. I only started last Thursday. So my vision is it's different. It's a public sector. I have to work with people, colleagues, trying to influence projects, and decision making isn't me. I have to go up the chain. I have to get senior leaders to sign off. So that's a different skills, and it's a different way of working. That's with my role now, but with Sign Health, with any voluntary sector, it's a huge organisation. However, I'm the chair. It means I can obviously liaise with the chief exec and the board, and we have to think decision making has to be collective. I don't have to go to senior managers. It's actually me negotiating with everybody else, engaging with the community, and I can support the strategic side. So it's a different set of skills. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. And I can grow. And as I said before, a new opportunity means that the door opens for yet more opportunities. I'm still learning. I'm still learning new things. And when I look back, I think, wow. But I do it because if I don't do it, who will? I want to do it. I want to make those changes. So I take on the responsibility. I don't ask other people to do it. I think if I want to see things change, then I make it happen.
That's brilliant. And clearly you are truly a change maker. That's really clear to me as I see you explain about your experience. So my last question for you. I think you've answered some of this already, and I know you've just finished some study. You have this role in Hertfordshire Local Authority. You have the new role at Sign Health. If we're talking about being a change maker, what are your plans for the future?
Change maker, yeah. At the moment, I'm trying to finish my MBA. I've nearly finished that, so fingers crossed. So my hope is that I pass and achieve and get my MBA. That's a challenge in itself. And see what opportunities, what that will offer me. I don't know at the moment. Watch this space.
That's absolutely fantastic. I don't think there are any further questions that I have to ask. I think the timing is just perfect. I just wanted to add before we finish. You are one of the few deaf leaders who has an opportunity. The path that's led you to where you are now. And there are lots of people out there who have played a part in contributing to that journey that I mentioned earlier. And you've described that really clearly about Kavita is an example of someone who supported you. Someone who's helped you to become reflective from what is quite humble beginnings to where you are now. It's just fascinating to hear that story. The fact that you set up your own charity, Deaf Parents UK, and also those other achievements that you have been realised along the way. I think your influence in health and social care in the public sector, that's really rare, actually, I have to say. It's very rare for somebody to be able to do that. A deaf individual, a deaf woman, Muslim, being able to influence in that context is very rare. And it's why I think that you are a change maker. You've opened doors for this change to happen. You've seen legislation through the Care Act. You described about that earlier. I think you've been pioneering in establishing services, organizations, change. And I think you're going to be forevermore. Your character is just one of leadership. Your traits within you are fantastic. You're a really humble person, but I can see that determination, and you want to see things happen. You want to see deaf people experience a better experience of life. And I'm delighted that you're able to work within Sign Health. I'm delighted you're working with local authority. And just to summarize, I would like to say, best of luck for the future. I hope you manage to pass your MBA. I'm sure you'll be fine. And also, good luck as you start as the chair of Sign Health. I am very confident that your full-time job is something that you'll see greater and greater success in the future. Thank you so much, Sabina, for your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Explaining about your story.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so that's the end of the summit seminar. That's been fantastic to hear about Sabina's experience. I hope you've enjoyed watching. And the next summit will be at some time in the future, and we will send information out ready for October. Again, Sabina, thank you so much for your time and for inspiring us with your wonderful life story. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you so much. Goodbye.